I am really excited to introduce to the people in my life that have asked me when I tell them that I've been hypnotized. This is our third time, right, Linda? Yeah. That they asked me about the hypnotism. Well, why? What else can you get hypnotized on? Why are you doing it? Well, this is my third time. I have stopped nicotine and tobacco. This will be my seventh time since I remember picking up a cigarette when I was 12. So the last two times I have done this with Linda, and I want to introduce her. But the last two times were different. I was using this stuff called Zyn, which is this clean nicotine that you put in your mouth. And then the other time I was actually smoking. This time I started vaping. So as soon as I started, I knew I needed to stop because it doesn't feel good and I don't want to be in my addictions. And fortunately, I have this beautiful soul, Linda Remley, who has been in my life for over a decade. She's been a client in the program that I work with, which also connects to addiction with food. And she also disclosed to me that she's a sober sister, and she's been sober a lot longer than I have. And just a great human being who is in service of helping vets with PTSD using this hypnosis. So, Linda, what I was hoping you would do is explain to those people who ask me about it, what is it exactly that you offer? What are the different areas that you feel you could help someone, and anything you want them to know?
Okay, thank you so much, Whitney. Um, well, let me just say that we work directly with the brain, and the brain is an organ in your body. Just like every other organ in your body, it's designed to heal itself without your cooperation or even without your attention. And so generally, I'm working with trauma. When trauma occurs, there's a couple of different parts of your mind. This part goes online and offline all the time. When you're driving somewhere where you've driven before, you know the way to get there, this part of the mind goes offline. We go into sort of a trance state, which means we're offline here, but this part of the mind is always online. It's always recording, and that's good because respiration and heartbeat occur in this part of the mind. Also, our survival skills are back here in this part. And our survival skills, we know better as fight or flight. Sometimes when there's a trauma, most times actually, this part goes right offline and the trauma is registered in this part of the mind. Occasionally, the trauma is so profound that it bypasses the mind and stores itself in the body. And so what I do is I work with movement in the body and also movement in this subconscious part of the mind. Many people have the idea or a thought about some sort of substance that's going to change their lives for the better. Now, I think that it takes a special body type to be able to become an alcoholic because you have to be able to tolerate quite a bit of alcohol in order to get addicted to it. So not everybody can do that. But there's other substances that change the way that we feel, our brain chemistry. And therefore, we become addicted to the feeling or the sensation or the mood. And those substances can be very addictive. What predicts the highest level of addiction is how high you get, how low you get when you don't have it, and the duration of the effect. So something like pot, not as highly addictive because you might get high. I mean, I've been pretty high sometimes, but you might get really high, but you don't get low, not necessarily, and it lasts a long time. Then there's other substances like cocaine. You go really high, really low, and it only lasts a short time. That's much more highly addictive. So something like nicotine, is it addictive? Well, your body does get used to it. But what I ask people to do is to taper down as much as they can prior to meeting with me. And when you taper down, it's not a physical dependency at that point. It's more of a, you're really loving that mood shift, or you're having a thought about what this substance does for you. So what I like to point out is, we can have thoughts all the time. I can have a thought that Martians deliver blue milk to my doorstep every morning because milk is blue on Mars, and that's what they're used to. And that I drink this blue milk and I'm super healthy because of it. It's a thought. It's a weird thought. It's a crazy thought. I know it's crazy. You know it's crazy. When you hear it, we're like, nah, don't want to entertain it. But then we could get another thought that I perform better when I smoke a cigarette. Well, you know what? That's just as crazy a thought. There's nothing in a cigarette that's going to cause you to perform better, or in a vape, or in a e-cigarette. But the mind is super at doing workarounds. So if I work with somebody and we're working on cigarettes, I remember to include vaping and e-cigarettes and chewing tobacco and any kind of introduction of that nicotine into your system, gum, patches, whatever, because the mind will work around that and say, well, you know what? She didn't mention this, so let's go to that. Can you override this type of work? Yes, of course you can. If you want to badly enough, if you feel like I have no alternative, you can override it, sure. And it gets easier and easier to override it. It's kind of like being on a healthy food program, and you love it and you love how you feel and everything is great. And then just one day you're at a party and somebody says, here, try this. No, no, thanks. It's not on my plan today. Oh, I worked so hard on it. I really want you to try it. It took me 4 hours to make it. And guilt kicks in, or codependency, whatever you want to call it, kicks in, and you're like, all right, I'll try one. And you try it, and then you're like, well, I had one. Might as well go for what I really want. Whatever. It's a slippery slope. Anybody that's dealt with any kind of addiction or compulsive behavior knows that. What I like to talk about, though, is in terms of distractions. Distractions or preoccupations. When the mind is cleared of distractions or preoccupations, the mind runs better. So I don't call what I do hypnosis at all. I call it a tune-up for the mind. Just a brain tune-up. Let's get rid of all distractions. Let's get rid of preoccupations. And frequently people will come to me and say, okay, I want to not do this anymore. And I say, okay, but are you open to whatever happens? Because something else might come up or present itself. We're relying on your higher self to let us know exactly which way we need to go with this. How's that for an explanation? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it all makes sense. The one question I get a lot is, what are the number one things that you can help somebody stop using, doing, thinking with hypnosis? What are the main things that you do?
Well, I'm a certified addictions professional, and I have been for 40 years. I know it's hard to believe when you look at me, but yes, I've been doing that for 40 years. And so I'm pretty great with all kinds of addictions. More recently, though, I guess early on in my career, I noticed that grief was a trauma that frequently presented itself with people that I saw. And so I wanted to help with grief. And then I began working with Vietnam veterans fairly early in my career, around 1982, 83. I began working with Vietnam veterans who had trauma. And many times I noticed that the trauma did not begin when they enlisted or when they deployed, but may have begun many years prior to that in childhood. With the post 9/11 veterans that I work with, it seems like they could have had a great childhood, but it was horribly traumatic in Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, really bad. So in working with that trauma, and also military sexual assault, which unfortunately is something that comes up not infrequently, and other types of sexual assault. car accidents, a lot of grief. I think family members of suicides, people who have suicided, because I don't like defining somebody by the way that they chose to check out or decided to check out or just it happened. So that's generally what I work with on a day-to-day basis. I don't always know what's going to happen. I do know that I get ideas and to me they seem weird, but when I say them to the person, they're like, oh my God, that's totally exactly what I needed to hear today. I had one person I worked with and I said, I don't know why, but for some reason, I'm seeing a candy dish and it's got the old-fashioned ribbon candy in it. And it's something that's very meaningful. And she said, yeah, my sister and I, it's the only thing that we have from our grandmother. And so it's a pleasant memory of being at our grandmother's house. And I don't know why those things come to mind for me, but they sometimes do come to mind for me. And it's been helpful for other people. I think it's more spiritual coaching is what I do. It's more on the order of inviting your higher power, my higher power, the higher powers to come in and help us figure out whatever's going on. I never use the H word, which you've used a few times, because it's a lot more than that. It's brain-based healing is
You
what
talk
we
about
call it.
hypnosis, that's the H word.
The H word, yeah, that's what we said. It's brain-based healing. It's very scientific. We actually, with our veterans, we do brain mapping. And we map the brain prior to a brain-based healing session, and then we map it afterwards. And the areas that were lighting up due to trauma do not light up anymore. And that's after one session. So that's pretty profound difference. I
Okay,
guess
that's fantastic. I think that you've answered all the questions that I've been asked. I think if somebody is serious about changing a behavior, a habit that they're not happy with, all the things that you shared, that they could contact you. And how would you like someone to contact you if they watch this and they're like, I need you?
they can text me or call me at 941-228-1995, or they can email me, laremley@gmail.com.
Well, Linda, let's get to work.
Okay,
Thank you for sharing.
my pleasure.